The crystal chandelier above table 12 swayed slightly as the high-pitched screams pierced through the elegant dining room. Sophie Harrison, all of 6 years old with blonde curls plastered to her tear-streaked face, pressed her small hands over her ears and rocked back and forth in the burgundy leather booth. Her voice rose in waves of distress that made silverware clatter and conversations halt mid-sentence. "Please, sweetheart, please," Jonathan Harrison pleaded, his broad shoulders hunched forward as he reached for his daughter. His navy suit jacket hung on the back of his chair, his white shirt sleeves rolled up in desperation. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the restaurant's perfect temperature. Every time his fingers came close, Sophie screamed louder, her whole body rigid with panic. Around them, the upscale steakhouse had fallen into uncomfortable silence. 40 pairs of eyes turned toward the disruption. A woman in a green cocktail dress whispered loudly to her companion, "Can't he control his own child?" An elderly man in a gray suit shook his head and gestured to a server, clearly asking for their table to be moved. 3 businessmen at the bar exchanged glances and smirks, their judgment clear even from across the room. Jonathan's face burned red, but not from embarrassment. This was helplessness. Pure, crushing helplessness. He had tried everything in his parenting arsenal over the past 4 years since Sophie's diagnosis. The behavioral therapists, the occupational specialists, the sensory integration programs that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Nothing prepared him for moments like this, when his little girl was drowning in a world too loud, too bright, too much for her nervous system to process. The restaurant manager approached, a thin man with slicked back hair and a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Harrison, sir, perhaps it would be better if you took your daughter outside? The other guests are becoming quite disturbed." "I'm trying," Jonathan said through clenched teeth. "Just give me a minute." "Sir, she's been screaming for 10 minutes. I really must insist." The manager's voice carried that special tone of politeness wrapped around steel. The message was clear: leave or be removed. Sophie's screams intensified. She was now hitting her own head with her fists, a self-soothing behavior that made Jonathan's heart crack every single time. He moved to grab her hands gently to stop her from hurting herself, but she thrashed away from him. Her elbow knocked over a water glass. The sound of shattering crystal sent her into even deeper distress. "That's it," the manager said, losing his polite facade. "Sir, you need to leave now. You're ruining the dining experience for everyone else." Jonathan felt the walls closing in. His throat tightened. Sophie needed him to be calm, but how could he be calm when the entire world seemed designed to reject his daughter? When every public space became a battlefield. When strangers looked at his beautiful, struggling child like she was a problem to be solved or removed. Then, cutting through the chaos like a beam of light through storm clouds, came a voice. Soft, steady, melodic. "Hi there, beautiful girl. I see you. I hear you. You're okay." A young woman had appeared beside their table. She wore the restaurant's standard uniform, a crisp white button-down shirt tucked into black slacks, with a red apron tied at her waist. But everything about her presence was different from the other servers who had nervously approached and retreated. She didn't tower over Sophie. Instead, she crouched down to eye level, several feet away from the booth, giving the child space. The woman's skin was deep brown, smooth and radiant even in the harsh restaurant lighting. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, revealing high cheekbones and warm, intelligent eyes that held no judgment, only understanding. Her name tag read Simone, in simple black letters. "The lights are too bright, aren't they?" Simone said, her voice just loud enough for Sophie to hear over her own crying. "And all these sounds, they're crashing together like waves. It's too much. Way too much." Something in her tone made Sophie's screams diminish slightly. The little girl's eyes, squeezed shut moments before, opened to narrow slits. She was listening. "I'm going to help you," Simone continued, still maintaining her distance. "But first, can you try to take a big breath with me? Just one. Like we're blowing out birthday candles. Can you try?" Sophie's breathing was still ragged, but her screams had dropped to whimpers. She watched Simone with the wariness of a wounded animal. "Ready? In through the nose." Simone demonstrated, her chest rising slowly. Out through the mouth. She pursed her lips and exhaled. Jonathan held his breath. He had tried breathing exercises 100 times before, and they had never worked. Not once. But Sophie, miracle of miracles, attempted to mimic Simone. Her breath hitched and caught, but she tried. Once, twice, 3 times. "That's so good," Simone praised gently. "You're doing so good, Sophie." The little girl's eyes widened. How did this stranger know her name? Simone glanced up at Jonathan for the first time and something passed between them. A moment of connection that said, I understand. I see what you're going through. You're not alone. Mr. Harrison, I'm going to do something that might seem strange, but please trust me, Simone said quietly. Then, without waiting for his response, she turned to the hovering manager. Curtis, I need you to dim the lights in this section by half. Right now. And ask the kitchen to hold all orders for the next 5 minutes. No clanging pots, no loud timers. Simone, I can't just, the manager started. Curtis. Simone's voice held quiet authority. 5 minutes. Please. Perhaps it was the confidence in her tone, or perhaps he was just grateful someone was handling the situation, but the manager nodded and hurried away. Within seconds, the harsh overhead lights in their section dimmed to a softer glow. The change was immediate and visible in Sophie's body language. Her shoulders, which had been up near her ears, dropped slightly. Better? Simone asked. Sophie nodded just barely. Okay. Now, I bet all these different smells are bothering you too. The steak, the perfume from that lady over there, the cleaning spray. So many smells all mixed up together. Simone reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small fabric square. This is a lavender sachet. Just lavender, nothing else. Would you like to smell something simple and calm? She held it out, still giving Sophie space to choose. The little girl, curiosity beginning to override panic, reached out a trembling hand. She took the sachet and brought it to her nose. Her breathing steadied further. The entire restaurant watched in stunned silence as this young waitress accomplished what the billionaire father, the expensive therapists, and the judgmental crowd could not. She was bringing Sophie back from the edge, not with force or frustration, but with understanding and patience. The table is probably too sticky, Simone continued, her voice a soothing rhythm. And the leather on the booth feels weird against your legs, right? Too squeaky? Sophie nodded more vigorously this time, her eyes locked on Simone like she was seeing someone who truly understood for the first time in her life. I thought so. Here's what we're going to do. There's a quiet booth in the back corner, away from the kitchen and the front door. Less noise. Less movement. I'm going to bring you and your dad back there, and I'll make sure it's clean and smooth. No sticky spots. Would that be better? Another nod. Sophie's hands had dropped from her ears. Can you walk there with me? You can hold your dad's hand if you want. Or you can walk by yourself. Either way is okay. For the first time since the meltdown began, Sophie looked at her father. Really looked at him. Jonathan felt tears prick his eyes at the recognition in her gaze. His daughter was coming back to him. Let's try the quiet booth, Sophie, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Simone's going to help us. Sophie slid out of the booth, clutching the lavender sachet. She didn't take Jonathan's hand, but she didn't refuse him either. She simply followed Simone, who walked slowly and purposefully toward the back of the restaurant. Jonathan gathered their belongings and followed, feeling the weight of every stare. The booth Simone led them to was indeed quieter. Tucked into a corner near an emergency exit that faced a small garden, it was away from the main dining area's bustle. The lighting was already dimmer here, and the green walls seemed to absorb sound rather than reflect it. I'm going to wipe down this table with just water, okay, Sophie? No chemicals, Simone said, pulling out a clean cloth. She meticulously cleaned every surface while Sophie watched. Then she gestured to the booth. All clean. All smooth. Sophie climbed in and immediately seemed more settled. The tension that had held her body rigid began to dissolve. Now, Simone said, pulling out her order pad, I'm guessing regular food sounds awful right now. Too many textures and tastes. Am I right? Sophie nodded. How about some plain crackers and apple juice? Simple. Nothing mixed together. Nothing surprising. Yes, Sophie whispered. It was the first word she had spoken since her meltdown began. Jonathan's breath caught. Perfect. I'll be right back with that. Mr. Harrison, can I get you anything? Jonathan, who had completely forgotten he was even in a restaurant to eat, shook his head. Just water. Thank you. Thank you so much. As Simone walked away, Jonathan finally allowed himself to sink into the booth across from his daughter. Sophie was holding the lavender sachet, taking small breaths of it, her eyes following Simone's retreating figure. She helped you, didn't she, sweetheart? Jonathan said softly. She knows, Sophie whispered. She knows what it feels like. Those 7 words contained universes of meaning. Jonathan had spent 4 years searching for people who truly understood his daughter's experience. He had hired experts, read books, joined support groups. But none of them had demonstrated the instinctive understanding that this waitress, this stranger, had shown in mere minutes. Around them, the restaurant slowly returned to normal volume. Conversations resumed, albeit with occasional glances toward their corner booth. But Jonathan didn't care anymore. His daughter was safe. She was calm. That was all that mattered. When Simone returned with the crackers, apple juice and Jonathan's water, she set them down gently. "Sophie, these crackers are on a blue plate. Blue is calming. The apple juice is in a plastic cup so it won't be too cold on your hands. Is that okay?" "Okay," Sophie said, reaching for a cracker. Jonathan watched his daughter eat, something she rarely did in restaurants without a fight. When he looked up at Simone, he saw her smiling, not with pity or condescension but with genuine warmth. "How did you know what to do?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "I've had therapists, specialists, people with decades of experience, and no one has ever been able to calm her down that fast." Simone's smile turned bittersweet. "My little brother, Terrence, he's 14 now. He has autism too. I've been helping take care of him since he was diagnosed at 3. I've learned a lot about sensory overload and meltdowns over the years. Every child is different, but there are patterns. Things that help. Your brother is lucky to have you," Jonathan said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. "We take care of each other," Simone replied simply. She glanced over her shoulder at the other tables in her section. "I should get back to my other customers, but I'll check on you both regularly. If Sophie needs anything at all, just wave me down, okay?" "Okay. And Simone? Thank you. I mean it. Thank you." She nodded and walked away, but something had fundamentally shifted in that restaurant. Jonathan had spent years feeling alone in his struggle to help Sophie navigate a world that wasn't built for her. In those brief minutes, a compassionate stranger had shown him that allies existed in unexpected places. He watched his daughter eat her crackers slowly, methodically, her breathing normal now. The lavender sachet sat beside her plate like a talisman. For the first time in months, Jonathan felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. But as the minutes passed and Sophie grew more comfortable, a question began forming in Jonathan's mind. Who was this young woman who worked in a steakhouse, who understood his daughter so completely, who had a brother with autism at home? What was her story? And more importantly, how could he possibly thank her enough for what she had done? Would you keep scrolling if you saw a child in distress, or would you be the one to step forward? Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change everything. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever witnessed a moment of unexpected compassion that restored your faith in humanity? The clock on the wall of Riverside Steakhouse read 7:43 p.m. when Sophie Harrison's world became too much to bear. Jonathan had noticed the signs building for the past 10 minutes, the way his daughter's fingers had started drumming against the table with increasing urgency, how her eyes had begun darting from the hanging plants to the gleaming bar to the fish tank built into the far wall. Too much visual input. Too much noise bleeding together into an overwhelming symphony of chaos. He should have left earlier. He knew better. But this dinner was supposed to be a celebration of a successful business deal, and Jonathan had foolishly believed that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Maybe Sophie would surprise him. Maybe the new sensory techniques her therapist had been teaching her would help her manage in this environment. He had been wrong. The first scream had torn through the restaurant like a siren, causing a waiter to drop a tray of glasses 3 tables away. Jonathan's stomach had dropped with those glasses. Here we go again, he had thought, his body flooding with a mixture of dread and fierce protective love for his daughter. Now, 15 minutes into the meltdown, Jonathan's carefully constructed composure was cracking. He was a man who commanded boardrooms, who made million-dollar decisions. Before breakfast, who could negotiate with the toughest business adversaries without breaking a sweat. But when his 6-year-old daughter was in distress, all his power meant nothing. "Sir, please," the manager said again, his earlier politeness completely evaporated. "You're disturbing everyone. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "I heard you the first time," Jonathan snapped, then immediately regretted his tone. This wasn't the manager's fault. This was nobody's fault. It just was. "I'm trying to help her. Just give me a moment." "You've had several moments," a man from a nearby table interjected. "Some of us are trying to enjoy our meals. Can't you take her outside?" Jonathan's jaw clenched so hard he thought his teeth might crack. Take her outside. As if Sophie were a misbehaving pet instead of a terrified child whose nervous system was being assaulted by stimuli she couldn't control. He opened his mouth to respond, to defend his daughter, to explain that autism wasn't a discipline problem, but what came out was, "We're leaving." But Sophie couldn't leave. Not in this state. Moving her when she was in sensory overload would only make things worse. Jonathan knew this from painful experience. The time he had tried to carry her out of a grocery store mid-meltdown, she had accidentally kicked him in the face so hard his nose had bled. The time in the movie theater when he had tried to guide her to the exit, and she had gone completely limp, a dead weight on the floor. Moving her now, in front of all these people, would be a disaster. Then Simone appeared and everything changed. Jonathan watched in amazement as this young woman, this stranger, seemed to intuitively understand what Sophie needed. The way she lowered the lights. The way she offered the lavender sachet instead of trying to touch Sophie or invade her space. The way she spoke about Sophie's experience as if she could see the world through his daughter's overwhelmed senses. When they finally settled into the quiet corner booth, Jonathan felt like he could breathe properly for the first time since the meltdown began. He watched Sophie take small, careful bites of her crackers, watched her hands stop trembling, watched color return to her face. Simone checked on them every few minutes but never hovered. She brought Jonathan a simple grilled chicken breast and vegetables without him having to order, somehow knowing he would need to eat but wouldn't be able to handle anything complicated right now. She brought Sophie a small bowl of fresh strawberries, cut into perfect quarters, arranged neatly on a white plate. She likes patterns, Simone explained quietly when she set down the strawberries. The way they're arranged. It helps. She was right. Sophie studied the strawberry arrangement with focused intensity, then ate each piece in a specific order. The 4 corner pieces first, then the middle ones, then the ones around the edge. Jonathan had never thought to arrange food in patterns before. He filed this information away in the growing mental catalog of things that helped his daughter. As the evening wore on and the restaurant slowly emptied of the dinner rush, Jonathan found himself watching Simone work. She moved through her section with practiced efficiency, but there was more to it than that. She seemed to notice things other servers missed. When an elderly couple struggled to read the menu in the dim lighting, she brought them a small battery-powered reading lamp from the hostess stand without being asked. When a young man sat alone looking anxious, she chatted with him briefly, helping him feel less conspicuous. She was the kind of person who saw people, really saw them. By 9:15 p.m., Sophie was calm enough to color on the children's menu Simone had provided, using the fresh crayons she had retrieved from a cupboard somewhere. The little girl hummed softly to herself, a sign she was feeling safe again. Jonathan seized this moment of peace to catch Simone as she passed their booth. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked. "When you have time?" "Sure. Let me just deliver these drinks and I'll be right back." When she returned, sliding into the booth beside Sophie instead of standing, Jonathan noticed how Sophie didn't flinch or move away. That alone was remarkable. His daughter rarely tolerated anyone in her personal space. "What you did tonight," Jonathan began, then found himself unexpectedly emotional. He cleared his throat. "I don't have words for what that meant. For what you did for Sophie." "I'm glad I could help," Simone said simply. "It was more than help. It was understanding. Real understanding. You said you have a brother with autism?" Simone nodded, her expression growing softer. "Terrence. He's 14. I've been his primary caregiver since our parents passed away 4 years ago in a car accident." Jonathan's heart clenched. "I'm so sorry." "Thank you. It was hard. It is hard. But Terrence is worth every challenge." She glanced at Sophie, who was now showing her the picture she had colored, a house with a bright red roof and blue walls. "Just like this beautiful girl is worth it for you. Every single day," Jonathan agreed. "Can I ask what you meant when you said you're his primary caregiver? Are you raising him alone?" "Yes. I'm 24, so I was 20 when it happened. The courts gave me guardianship since I was over 18 and Terrence was comfortable with me. It made sense. He doesn't do well with change, and moving him to live with relatives he barely knew would have been traumatic." 24. She was only 24 years old and she was raising a teenage brother with autism by herself while working in a restaurant. Jonathan felt a wave of respect wash over him. "That must be incredibly difficult," he said. "Some days more than others. But we manage. I work 3 jobs to cover his therapy, his sensory equipment, his school needs. This is my main job. I also clean offices on the weekends and do freelance bookkeeping online when Terrence is asleep." She said this matter-of-factly, without any hint of self-pity or looking for sympathy. 3 jobs. Jonathan thought about his own life, his penthouse apartment with panoramic city views, his vacation home in Aspen, the fact that he could buy Sophie any therapy or equipment she needed without thinking twice about the cost. The contrast was staggering. "You said you do bookkeeping?" he asked. "Yes. I was studying accounting before my parents died. I had to drop out to take care of Terrence, but I learned enough to do basic financial work for small businesses. An idea was forming in Jonathan's mind, but he pushed it aside for the moment. He didn't want to overwhelm Simone or make her feel uncomfortable. Right now, he just wanted to express his gratitude. Listen, I want to do something for you. To thank you for what you did tonight. Simone shook her head immediately. That's not necessary. Really. I was just doing what anyone would do. But most people didn't do anything, Jonathan pointed out. Most people just stared or complained. You stepped up. Please let me do something. What if I covered your rent for this month? Would that help? He watched her carefully, saw the way her eyes widened, the way she started to refuse automatically, then paused. She was clearly torn between pride and practical need. Mr. Harrison, that's incredibly generous, but I can't accept that, she said finally. Why not? Because it's too much. Because we just met. Because I didn't help Sophie expecting anything in return. I know you didn't. That's exactly why I want to do this. Simone, please. You have no idea what tonight meant to me. To Sophie. Let me help you the way you helped us. How much is your rent? She hesitated, then named a figure that made Jonathan's heart ache. It was less than he spent on coffee in a month. For her, working 3 jobs, it was probably a monumental struggle. Consider it done. I'll have my assistant send you a check tomorrow. What's your full name and address? Mr. Harrison, really, Simone trailed off, and Jonathan could see the moment when practical necessity won out over pride. She needed this help even if she didn't want to admit it. Simone Brooks. And thank you. Truly. This will make a huge difference for Terrence and me. She gave him her address, writing it on a napkin in neat, careful handwriting. Jonathan tucked it into his wallet like it was made of gold. It's the least I can do, he said. And please call me Jonathan. Jonathan, she repeated, and he liked the way his name sounded in her warm voice. They talked for another 20 minutes, with Sophie coloring contentedly beside them. Jonathan learned that Simone had grown up in the city, that she loved reading mystery novels, that her dream before her parents died had been to become an accountant and maybe eventually start her own business helping other families with special needs children manage their finances. In turn, he told her about Sophie's diagnosis 4 years ago, about his ex-wife who had left when she couldn't handle the challenges of raising a child with autism, about his own feelings of inadequacy and frustration when he couldn't help his daughter the way he wanted to. You're a good father, Simone said firmly. I can see how much you love her. That's what matters most. Some days I wonder if love is enough, Jonathan admitted. It's the foundation. Everything else builds on that. And for what it's worth, Sophie is lucky to have you. When they finally left the restaurant at 10 p.m., long after the kitchen had closed, Jonathan felt lighter than he had in months. Sophie held his hand willingly, something she rarely did, and even waved goodbye to Simone as they walked out the door. In the parking lot, Jonathan buckled Sophie into her car seat and watched her yawn, exhausted from the emotional ordeal of the evening. But she was calm, peaceful. All thanks to a compassionate waitress named Simone Brooks. As he drove home through the city streets, Jonathan's mind was already working. The rent check was just the beginning. Simone was clearly intelligent, hardworking, and had skills that were being wasted on juggling 3 low-paying jobs. She had a gift for understanding neurodivergent children. There had to be a way he could help her build the life she deserved, the life she had sacrificed when she took on the responsibility of raising her brother. It wasn't charity. It was recognition. And maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something neither of them had expected to find. A connection that could change all their lives for the better. 3 days after the restaurant incident, Jonathan stood in his corner office on the 42nd floor of the Harrison Financial Building, holding the business card of his assistant, Patricia. He had asked her to prepare something specific, and now he held the results in his hand. A comprehensive benefits package proposal for a new position at his company. He had not been able to stop thinking about Simone Brooks, or more accurately about the situation she was in. 24 years old, working 3 jobs, raising a teenage brother with autism, all while struggling to make rent in a city where the cost of living seemed to double every few years. It was wrong. It was unfair. And Jonathan Harrison had both the means and the motivation to do something about it. The rent check had been delivered Monday morning, exactly as promised. He had included a note thanking her again for her kindness to Sophie. He wondered how she had reacted when she opened it. Relief? Gratitude? Suspicion? With someone as proud as Simone seemed to be, it could have been all 3. Now, Saturday afternoon, Jonathan was heading back to Riverside Steakhouse with Sophie. They had a standing reservation, though the hostess didn't know they would be specifically requesting Simone's section. You wanted it to seem natural, not planned. We're going to see Simone? Sophie asked from her booster seat as they pulled into the parking lot. She had talked about the waitress every day since Tuesday night, which was notable because Sophie rarely talked about people outside of her immediate circle. We're going to the restaurant, Jonathan corrected gently. Simone works there, so we might see her. I want to see her. She gave me the purple smell. Sophie had started calling the lavender sachet the purple smell, and carried it everywhere now. They entered the restaurant at 2 p.m., the slow period between lunch and dinner. The hostess, a young woman with red hair and a professional smile, greeted them warmly. Mr. Harrison, good to see you again. Your usual table? Actually, I was hoping to sit in Simone's section if she's working today. The hostess's smile widened knowingly. She is. Let me see what I have available. They were led to a different table than last time, near a window that looked out onto the street. The lighting was natural and soft, and Jonathan made a mental note that this was a good spot for Sophie. His daughter settled into her chair and immediately began arranging the sugar packets into a straight line, one of her comfort behaviors. Simone appeared within minutes, and the genuine smile that lit up her face when she saw them made something warm bloom in Jonathan's chest. Well, hello again, she said, crouching down to Sophie's eye level. Look at you, Sophie. I love your green dress. Green is such a happy color. Simone, Sophie said solemnly. I brought the purple smell. She held up the lavender sachet like a treasure. I'm so glad it's helping you. That's wonderful. Simone's eyes met Jonathan's and he saw questions there. Why are you back? Why are you in my section? But she was too professional to ask directly. We wanted to thank you again, Jonathan said. What you did the other night, it made such a difference. Sophie has been asking about you all week. That's sweet. I'm happy to see you both. Simone pulled out her order pad. What can I get for you today? Actually, before we order, I wanted to talk to you about something. Do you have a minute? Simone glanced around the restaurant. The other tables in her section were occupied but settled. I have a few minutes. Let me just check on table 6 and I'll be right back. When she returned, Jonathan had already thought through his approach. He needed to present this carefully so she wouldn't feel pressured or patronized. I wanted to let you know that the rent check helped enormously, Simone said before he could begin. It meant Terrence and I could buy groceries without worry this week, and I was able to take him to a movie on Sunday. A sensory-friendly showing. He loved it. So thank you really. I'm glad. But that's actually related to what I wanted to discuss. Jonathan took a breath. Simone, I have a proposal for you. Please hear me out before you say no. Her expression became guarded. Okay. My company, Harrison Financial, has an employee wellness center. We provide services for our staff. A gym, mental health counseling, stress management programs. We've been wanting to expand our services to be more inclusive for employees with different needs. Sensory-friendly spaces, resources for neurodivergent individuals, that kind of thing. That sounds wonderful, Simone said slowly, clearly not sure where this was going. We need someone to manage that expansion. Someone who understands both the practical and emotional aspects of neurodivergence. Someone who has lived experience. I'd like to offer you that position. Simone's eyes widened. Mr. Harrison. Jonathan. I don't have a degree. I didn't finish college. You have something better than a degree. You have real-world experience and natural talent. What you did for Sophie wasn't something anyone taught you from a textbook. It came from years of learning, adapting, and caring for your brother. That's exactly what this position needs. But I don't know anything about running a wellness center or managing a business department. You'd learn. We provide training. And honestly, the job is less about business management and more about understanding people. Creating programs that actually help. Making sure our facilities are genuinely accessible, not just technically compliant with regulations. You already know how to do that. Simone shook her head, but Jonathan could see she was considering it. What about the salary? He named a figure that made her inhale sharply. It was triple what she probably made from all 3 of her current jobs combined. He saw her mental calculations, the way her eyes unfocused as she processed what that kind of financial security would mean. That's too much, she whispered. It's the market rate for the position, Jonathan said firmly. Plus benefits, health insurance for you and Terrence. Paid time off. Flexible hours so you can work around his therapy schedule. A budget for continuing education if you want to finish your degree. Why are you doing this? The question came out more confused than accusatory. Because you're qualified. Because my company needs someone like you. And because you helped my daughter when no one else would. You saw her as a person, not a problem. That kind of compassion and understanding is rare, Simone. I want to invest in it. Sophie, who had been quietly playing with her sugar packets, suddenly spoke up. Stay with us, Simone. Don't be at the restaurant anymore. Both adults looked at the little girl in surprise. Sophie rarely involved herself in adult conversations, let alone expressed preferences about staffing decisions. Sophie likes you, Jonathan said unnecessarily. That's not something that happens often. Simone reached out slowly, telegraphing her movement, and gently touched Sophie's hand. The little girl didn't pull away. I like you too, Sophie. Very much. So will you consider it? Jonathan pressed. Take some time to think about it. Talk it over with Terrence. But please don't say no just because you think you're not qualified. You are. I need to check on my tables, Simone said, her voice thick. Can we talk about this later? Of course. Here's my card. My personal cell number is on the back. Call me anytime. She took the card with trembling fingers and hurried away. Jonathan watched her go, hoping he hadn't pushed too hard. But he believed what he had told her. She was perfect for this position. And more than that, he wanted to see what she could accomplish when she wasn't drowning in financial stress and exhaustion. They ordered lunch, and Simone brought their food with professional efficiency, but Jonathan could see her mind working behind her eyes. She was considering it. Really considering it. As they finished their meal, the restaurant began filling up with the early dinner crowd. Simone was getting busier, juggling multiple tables with practiced grace. Jonathan paid the check, leaving a generous tip, and was preparing to leave when Simone appeared at their table one more time. Can you wait for just a few minutes? She asked. My shift ends at 3. I'd like to talk more about your offer. Absolutely. We'll wait outside. 20 minutes later, Simone emerged from the restaurant in jeans and a blue sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger out of uniform and prettier. Jonathan filed that observation away, reminding himself this was a business arrangement. I talked to my manager, Simone said, slightly breathless. Gave my 2 weeks' notice. That was the scariest thing I've done in a long time. Jonathan felt his heart rate increase. You're accepting the position? I'm accepting the offer to try. I might fail completely. I might have no idea what I'm doing. But you're right that the salary would change everything for Terrence and me. And if I can help create spaces that make life easier for people like him and Sophie, that's worth the risk. You won't fail, Jonathan said with certainty he genuinely felt. When can you start? 2 weeks from Monday? That gives me time to train my replacement here and to talk to Terrence about the changes. Perfect. I'll have Patricia, my assistant, email you all the details. Welcome to Harrison Financial, Simone. He held out his hand. She shook it, her grip firm and confident. In that moment, Jonathan had the strange feeling that this handshake was the beginning of something significant, though he couldn't have articulated exactly what. Sophie, standing beside him, suddenly reached up and took Simone's other hand. The little girl looked up at the young woman with an expression of complete trust. You're staying? Sophie said. Not a question. A statement of fact. I'm staying, Simone confirmed, squeezing Sophie's hand gently. And Jonathan realized that somewhere in the past few days, his carefully controlled life had begun to shift in ways he hadn't planned but found himself welcoming anyway. Simone's first day at Harrison Financial was terrifying. She stood in the lobby of the glass and steel tower, watching important-looking people in expensive suits stride past with purpose and confidence, and questioned every decision that had led her to this moment. What had she been thinking accepting this job? She was a waitress and a part-time bookkeeper, not a corporate wellness manager. These people would see through her in seconds. But then Patricia, Jonathan's assistant, appeared with a warm smile and a visitor's badge, and some of Simone's panic eased. Mr. Harrison is in meetings until noon, but he asked me to get you settled, Patricia explained as they rode the elevator up. She was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and kind eyes. Don't look so nervous, dear. Jonathan doesn't make bad hiring decisions. If he believes you can do this, then you can. Simone's office was on the 38th floor, smaller than Jonathan's but with a view of the city that took her breath away. The desk was new, the computer top of the line, and there was a small sitting area with a couch and comfortable chairs. This is for consultations, Patricia explained. When you meet with employees, you want them to feel comfortable, not like they're in trouble. Jonathan was very specific about the furniture choices. Nothing too formal. It's perfect, Simone said, still taking it all in. The morning was a whirlwind of orientations, paperwork, and introductions to key staff members. Everyone was polite, though Simone could sense the curiosity. Who was this young woman with no apparent corporate experience who had been given such an important position? She tried not to let the questions in their eyes shake her confidence. At noon, Jonathan appeared at her office door, and Simone felt genuine relief at seeing a familiar face. "How's your first day going?" he asked, settling into one of the consultation chairs. "Overwhelming," Simone admitted. "But good, I think." "Maybe." Jonathan smiled. "That's normal. Listen, I know I threw you into the deep end here, but I want you to know that I'm available whenever you need guidance. This position is genuinely new. We're figuring it out together. That actually makes me feel better. I was worried there was some manual I was supposed to have memorized. No manual. Just your instincts and experience. Speaking of which, I'd like you to start by auditing our current facilities. The gym, the break rooms, the cafeteria. Look at everything through the lens of accessibility and sensory friendliness. What works? What doesn't? What could be improved?" "I can do that," Simone said, feeling more confident now that she had a concrete task. "Good. Take your time. Observe. Talk to employees if they're comfortable sharing their experiences. I trust your judgment." Over the next 2 weeks, Simone threw herself into the work. She discovered that while Harrison Financial had excellent facilities, they were designed for neurotypical users. The gym had bright fluorescent lighting and loud music that would be overwhelming for anyone with sensory sensitivities. The cafeteria was cavernous and echo-y. The break rooms had no quiet spaces for people who needed to decompress. She compiled detailed reports with specific recommendations: dimmer switches and alternative lighting options, quiet zones in the cafeteria, noise-canceling headphones available for checkout, fidget tools in conference rooms, changes to the harsh white walls to more calming colors. Jonathan approved every suggestion without question and gave her a generous budget to implement them. "This is exactly what I hoped you'd do," he said when she presented her first round of changes. "You're seeing things the rest of us never noticed." But the real breakthrough came 3 weeks into her employment when Jonathan asked if she'd be willing to meet Sophie after school one day and spend some time with her. "I have a meeting that will run late and Sophie's therapist canceled," he explained. "I hate to ask, but you're one of the few people she's comfortable with. Would you mind picking her up from school and staying with her for a couple of hours?" "Of course," Simone said immediately. "I'd love to." That afternoon, Simone stood outside Riverside Elementary School, waiting with the other parents and caregivers for dismissal. When Sophie emerged from the building, she was holding the hand of a teaching assistant, her expression neutral. But when she saw Simone, the little girl's face transformed. "Simone," Sophie said, breaking away from the assistant and walking directly to her. "You came." "I came," Simone confirmed. "Your dad asked if I could spend some time with you this afternoon. Is that okay?" "Yes." Sophie took Simone's hand naturally, a gesture of trust that made Simone's heart squeeze. They walked to a nearby park, and Simone watched as Sophie gravitated toward the swings. The little girl didn't swing high, just gently rocked back and forth, the repetitive motion clearly soothing. Simone sat on the swing beside her and matched her rhythm. "Do you like your new job?" Sophie asked after a few minutes of comfortable silence. "I do. It's different from my old jobs, but I like helping people feel comfortable. Like you help me feel comfortable." "Yes, like that." "My dad likes you," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "He smiles more when you're around." Simone felt heat creep into her cheeks. "I like your dad too. He's been very kind to me and my brother." "Can I meet your brother?" The question surprised Simone. "Would you like to?" "Yes. He's like me, right?" "He has autism too." "He does. But every person with autism is different. Terrence is older than you and he likes different things." "What is he like?" "He loves computers. He can program and code. He's teaching himself game design." Sophie considered this, still swinging gently. "I like patterns. And music. But not loud music. Soft music." "I'll remember that." They spent 2 hours together walking through the park, sitting on a bench while Sophie organized rocks by size and color, talking about school and favorite foods and what made certain textures feel good or bad. By the time Jonathan arrived to pick up Sophie, Simone felt like she understood the little girl even better than before. "Thank you," Jonathan said, and there was something in his expression that went beyond simple gratitude. "Sophie never opens up to people the way she does with you." "She's special," Simone said. "Really special. Would you consider doing this regularly? I know it's outside your job description, but I'd pay you for the time, and I think it would be good for Sophie to have you in her life more consistently." "You don't have to pay me extra. I'd love to spend time with Sophie. She reminds me of Terrence at that age. And honestly, It would help me understand the needs of children with autism better, which helps me do my job. At least let me adjust your salary to reflect the additional responsibility." Simone started to protest, then remembered her promise to herself to accept help when it was offered. "Okay. Thank you." That evening, Simone went home to the apartment she shared with Terrence and told him about her day. Her brother, tall and gangly at 14, listened with his typical focused intensity. "So you're basically a nanny now too?" Terrence asked. "No, more like a friend. Sophie's dad needs help sometimes and I like spending time with her." "Is this the billionaire guy who gave you the fancy job?" "He's not just a billionaire guy. He's a single father trying his best. And yes, he gave me this opportunity, but I'm working hard to earn it." Terrence studied her face. He wasn't great with social cues, but he knew his sister well. "You like him." "I like working for him," Simone corrected. "That's not what I meant." Simone felt her cheeks warm again. "It doesn't matter what I might or might not feel. He's my boss. There are boundaries." "Boundaries are social constructs designed to maintain professional hierarchies," Terrence said, clearly quoting something he had read. "But they can also prevent authentic human connection." "When did you become a philosopher?" "I've been reading about workplace dynamics. It's interesting how many arbitrary rules govern human interaction in professional settings." Simone laughed and ruffled his hair, knowing he tolerated the gesture only from her. "Well, these arbitrary rules exist for good reasons. And I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize this job. It's changed our lives, Terrence. We have stability now. I'm not risking that." But as she lay in bed that night, Simone couldn't help replaying Sophie's innocent words. "My dad likes you. He smiles more when you're around." Did Jonathan see her as more than an employee? More than someone he was helping out of kindness? And more importantly, did she want him to? She pushed the thoughts away. Jonathan Harrison lived in a different world. He was a billionaire who wore suits that probably cost more than her monthly salary and lived in a penthouse she couldn't even imagine. She was a girl from a modest background who had been a waitress 3 weeks ago. But even as she told herself all the reasons why any attraction was impossible, impractical, and inappropriate, Simone couldn't quite eliminate the small spark of hope that had ignited in her chest. Because the truth was, she did like Jonathan. She liked his devotion to his daughter, his willingness to learn and adapt, the way he treated her like an equal despite their vastly different circumstances. And she liked the way he looked at her sometimes, when he thought she wasn't paying attention. Like she was someone worth seeing. Have you ever felt invisible until someone truly saw you? Like this story? Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts below. Your support helps us create more content like this. 6 weeks into her position at Harrison Financial, Simone had transformed the Employee Wellness Center beyond even Jonathan's expectations. The gym now had an alternative fitness room with softer lighting, yoga mats, and gentle exercise equipment for people who found traditional gyms overwhelming. The cafeteria featured a designated quiet zone with sound-dampening panels on the walls. She had introduced sensory kits at the front desk, free to borrow, containing items like noise-canceling headphones, fidget tools, and stress balls. But more impressively, she had created a culture change. Employees who had previously felt uncomfortable asking for accommodations now came to her office regularly, knowing they would be heard and helped without judgment. The CEO of operations, a man named Gordon who had never disclosed his ADHD diagnosis to anyone at work, told Jonathan that Simone's office had become his favorite place in the building. "She gets it," Gordon had said. "Not just theoretically. She really understands what it's like when your brain works differently." Jonathan had felt a surge of pride that surprised him with its intensity. He had known Simone was capable, but watching her flourish in this role was deeply satisfying. He found himself looking for excuses to stop by her office, to check in on projects that didn't really need his oversight, to hear her ideas and observations. He finally admitted to himself one evening as he reviewed reports in his home office, developing feelings for her. Real feelings. The kind that made him think about her when he should be focused on quarterly earnings. The kind that made him smile when her name appeared in his email inbox. The kind that scared him because he was her employer and she was 12 years younger and the power dynamic was all wrong. So he did nothing. He remained professional, friendly but not too friendly, appreciative but not overly so. He ignored the way his heart rate increased when she walked into a room. He told himself it was just gratitude, just respect for her abilities. Just anything except what it actually was. Then came the evening that changed everything. It was a Thursday in November, and Jonathan had a business dinner with potential investors that he couldn't reschedule. Sophie's grandmother, who usually helped with evening coverage, was out of town. The backup sitter had cancelled at the last minute. In desperation, Jonathan called Simone. "I know this is last minute and completely unfair to ask," he said, pacing his office. "But could you possibly stay with Sophie tonight? I'll pay you double your hourly rate, triple even. I just don't have any other options." "Jonathan, you don't need to pay me extra. Of course I'll stay with her. What time do you need me?" He could have kissed her. Not that he let himself think about kissing her. "Much? 6 o'clock? I should be home by 10 at the latest." "Perfect. That gives me time to run home and grab some things. Should I come to your place?" "Yes. I'll text you the address." That evening, Simone arrived at Jonathan's penthouse with an overnight bag and a bright smile. She had changed from her work clothes into jeans and a maroon sweater, her hair in a ponytail. She looked younger, more relaxed, and Jonathan had to physically remind himself not to stare. "This place is incredible," she said, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows with their panoramic city views. "Thank you." "Sophie's in her room. She knows you're coming and she's excited. There's food in the fridge. Help yourself to anything." Sophie usually has dinner around 6:30 and then some quiet playtime before her bath at 8. Bedtime is 8:30. "We'll be fine. Go to your dinner. Don't worry about us." Jonathan left, but worrying about them was exactly what he did. Not because he didn't trust Simone. The opposite. He trusted her more than he had trusted anyone in years. But having her in his home, caring for his daughter, felt significant in a way he couldn't quite articulate. It felt domestic. It felt right. The dinner was interminable. Jonathan smiled and made small talk and discussed investment opportunities while his mind was across the city in his penthouse. He checked his phone constantly, but there were no emergency texts from Simone. He told himself this was good. No news was good news. He made it home by 9:30, earlier than expected. The apartment was quiet when he entered. He found Simone and Sophie in the living room, sitting on the floor in front of the couch. Sophie was in her pajamas, hair damp from her bath, and she was teaching Simone how to arrange her collection of smooth stones in what she called rainbow order. "No, see, this one has more red in it, so it goes here," Sophie was explaining with the patience of a teacher. "And this one is more orange-red, so it goes next." "You're right. I see it now," Simone said, carefully moving the stones. "Your system makes perfect sense." They both looked up when Jonathan cleared his throat. Sophie smiled, that rare, unguarded smile she reserved for moments when she felt completely safe. "Dad, I'm teaching Simone my stone organization." "I can see that. Looks like you're doing a great job." He looked at Simone. "How did everything go?" "Perfectly. Sophie was wonderful. We had dinner, did some drawing, took a bath, read 3 books, and now we're doing geology apparently." "It's not geology, it's patterns," Sophie corrected. "You're absolutely right. I apologize." Simone's eyes met Jonathan's and something passed between them. Warmth. Understanding. Something else. "Sophie, it's past your bedtime," Jonathan said gently. 5 more minutes? Please? I want to show Simone the purple stones too." He didn't have the heart to say no. 5 minutes. Then teeth brushing in bed. He went to change out of his suit, and when he returned, Simone was telling Sophie a story about Terence and a collection of computer parts he had organized by color when he was her age. "He had them all over his room," Simone was saying. "Red wires here, blue wires there, yellow capacitors in a special box. My mom used to say his room looked like a rainbow exploded in an electronics store." Sophie giggled. "I want to meet Terence." "You will," Simone promised. "Soon." After tucking Sophie into bed, Jonathan returned to find Simone collecting her things. "You don't have to rush off," he said. "Can I offer you a drink? Coffee? What? Tea?" She hesitated, then set down her bag. "Tea would be nice." They moved to the kitchen and Jonathan put the kettle on. The space felt charged with unspoken things. He busied himself getting mugs and tea bags, hyper-aware of her presence behind him. "Thank you again for tonight," he said. "You saved me. Sophie makes it easy. She's such a sweet kid. She's different with you. More open. More herself. Maybe because I understand what it's like to see the world differently. To need things to be a certain way for comfort." The kettle whistled. Jonathan poured hot water over the tea bags and brought the mugs to the kitchen island where Simone had settled on a stool. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course. Why did you really take this job? And I don't mean the salary, though I know that was a factor. But you could have found other ways to make more money. You could have finished your accounting degree at night, gotten a corporate job eventually. Why this? Why work for me?" Simone wrapped her hands around her mug, considering. because it felt like it meant something. When you described the position, I realized I could help people like Terrence. People like Sophie. I could make spaces where they felt comfortable being themselves. That matters to me more than money. Though the money definitely helps, she added with a small smile. You're making a real difference. You know that, right? The feedback I've gotten from employees has been overwhelmingly positive. You've created something special. It doesn't feel like work. It feels like I'm just doing what should be done anyway. That's why you're good at it. They sipped their tea in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Simone said, "Can I ask you something now? Fair is fair. Why did you really offer me this job? And I don't mean because I helped Sophie. I mean, why this specific position? You could have just given me money or helped me find a different job. Why bring me into your company?" Jonathan had known this question would come eventually. He took a breath. "Because I saw something in you that night at the restaurant. Not just competence or compassion. I saw someone who understood a world most people don't see. Someone who could teach others to see it too. And selfishly, I wanted you in my life. In Sophie's life. I wanted to be around someone who saw my daughter as a person first, a diagnosis second. I'm glad you did. This job has changed everything for Terrence and me. Has it been what you expected? Better. I was terrified at first. But I love it. The work, the people, feeling like I'm contributing something meaningful. And..." She paused, then continued, "Spending time with you and Sophie." There it was. The acknowledgement that this had become more than just a professional relationship. Jonathan's heart was pounding now. "We love spending time with you too," he said carefully. "Both of us." Their eyes met and held. The kitchen suddenly felt very small, the space between them charged with possibility. Jonathan found himself leaning forward slightly, drawn by some magnetic pull. Then Simone's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. "It's Terrence. I should take this." "Of course." She answered, and Jonathan watched her expression shift from concern to relieved. "Yes, I'll be home in 30 minutes. No, it's fine. I'm glad you called. Love you too." She hung up. "Terrence has insomnia sometimes. He gets anxious when I'm not home at my usual time. I should go. Let me drive you." "You don't have to do that. It's late. Please, let me." They drove through the quiet city streets, the radio playing softly. Jonathan pulled up outside her apartment building, a modest structure in a decent neighborhood. "Thank you," Simone said. "For the ride. For everything." Simone. Jonathan started, then stopped. What was he doing? What was he about to say? "I really appreciate you. All that you do." She smiled, a bit sadly, he thought. "I appreciate you too, Jonathan. Good night." He watched her enter the building safely, then sat in his car for a long moment before driving home. He had been about to say something. Something that would have crossed the line from employer to something else. Something more. He couldn't do that. The power dynamic was too uneven. She might feel obligated to return his feelings because he was her boss, because he had helped her brother, because he could still take it all away if she refused him. But as he drove home through the empty streets, Jonathan admitted to himself what he had been denying for weeks. He was falling for Simone Brooks. And he had no idea what to do about it. The first snowfall of the season came in early December, transforming the city into a white wonderland. Simone stood at her office window, watching the flakes drift past the glass, feeling a contentment she hadn't known in years. Her brother's therapy was covered by her new insurance. She had been able to buy him a new computer for his coding projects. Their apartment was warm and their refrigerator full. She had stability, purpose, hope. And she had feelings for her boss that grew stronger every day despite her best efforts to contain them. It had been 3 weeks since the evening she'd stayed with Sophie at Jonathan's penthouse. 3 weeks of maintaining professional boundaries during work hours while feeling her heart rate increase whenever he walked into a room. 3 weeks of telling herself that his kindness was just kindness, his attention just appropriate management, his smiles just friendly. She was not succeeding in convincing herself. A knock at her door pulled her from her thoughts. Patricia entered with her usual efficient smile. "Mr. Harrison would like to see you in his office when you have a moment," she said. Simone's stomach fluttered. "Is something wrong?" On the contrary. He seemed quite pleased about something. "Go on up, dear." Jonathan's office was even more impressive than Simone's, with mahogany furniture and leather chairs that probably cost more than her first car. He stood by his window, also watching the snow, and turned when she entered. "Close the door, please," he said. Simone did, her heart hammering. Had she done something wrong? Was he going to let her go? "Sit down. Please." She sat in one of the leather chairs, gripping the armrests. Jonathan settled into the chair beside her rather than behind his imposing desk, which somehow made this feel more personal. I have something I'd like to discuss with you. It's about Terrence. Terrence? Is he okay? He's fine. But I've been thinking about his situation. You mentioned he's teaching himself game design? Yes. He's incredibly talented. He's been coding since he was 8. Has he had any formal training? Classes? Access to professional-level software and equipment? No. We can't afford that. He uses free programs and tutorials he finds online. Jonathan nodded as if confirming something he already knew. I'd like to change that. I want to pay for Terrence to attend a specialized coding academy. There's one here in the city specifically for gifted young people. It's a weekend program and they have experience working with neurodivergent students. The instructors there could help him develop his skills properly. Simone felt tears prick her eyes. Jonathan, that's too much. You've already done so much for us. I haven't done nearly enough. And this isn't charity, Simone. It's an investment. Terrence has real talent. He could have a genuine career in tech if he gets the right training and opportunities. I'm not offering this out of pity. I'm offering it because I believe in his potential. But the cost is irrelevant to me and life-changing for him. Please let me do this. Let me help Terrence become everything he's capable of being. Simone tried to speak, but emotion clogged her throat. She had spent 4 years carrying the weight of being Terrence's sole support, making every sacrifice necessary to give him a decent life. And here was Jonathan, offering to lift some of that burden not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Why are you so good to us? She finally managed to ask. Because you deserve it. Because Terrence deserves it. Because I can, and it would be wrong not to when I have the means to help. He paused. And because you've become important to me. Both of you. Those last words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Simone's breath caught. We've become important to you too, she said quietly. You and Sophie. More important than I probably should admit. Simone. Jonathan leaned forward, his expression intense. I need to tell you something. But I need you to know that what I'm about to say comes with no pressure. No expectations. Your job is secure regardless of how you respond. Your brother's opportunities are secure. Nothing I'm offering you or Terrence is contingent on anything. Do you understand? She nodded, her heart racing. I have feelings for you. Real feelings. I've been trying to ignore them, to push them away because the situation is complicated. I'm your boss. I'm older. I have a daughter who needs stability. But I can't pretend anymore. I think about you constantly. I look for excuses to see you. I smile more when you're around, just like Sophie said. Simone's eyes widened. You heard that? She told me later. And she was right. You make me happy in a way I haven't been since Sophie was diagnosed. Maybe even before that. You understand my life in a way no one else does. You care about my daughter genuinely, not because you feel obligated. And you're brilliant and kind and stronger than anyone I've ever met. Jonathan, Simone's mind was racing. Everything she had been feeling he felt too. The attraction wasn't one-sided. But the complications were real. I have feelings for you too. I've been trying so hard to ignore them, to keep things professional. But it's been impossible. You see me. Really see me. Not just what I can do for you but who I am. So where does that leave us? I don't know. You're my boss. There's a power imbalance. What if you weren't my employee? What if we found you a different position somewhere else, somewhere without that complication? No, Simone said immediately. I love my job. I love what I'm doing. I don't want to leave. Then we take things slowly. We set clear boundaries. We're honest about our feelings but we don't act on them until we're sure. And we put Sophie first always. If this relationship would hurt her or confuse her, we stop. She already thinks of us as important to each other, Simone pointed out. She's mentioned it to me several times. How you're happier. How she likes having me around. She's perceptive. Too perceptive sometimes. They sat in silence for a moment, processing. Then Simone said, So what do we do? Start dating? Maybe we just spend more time together. With Sophie. Let things develop naturally. See if what we feel in isolation holds up in reality. That sounds reasonable. Good. So, would you and Terrence like to come to dinner at my place this weekend? Properly meet each other? Sophie's been asking about him constantly. Simone smiled, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. We'd love that. Saturday at 6? Perfect. She stood to leave but Jonathan caught her hand. The contact sent electricity through her arm. "Thank you," he said. "For being honest. For being you. Thank you for seeing me. For helping Terrence. For everything." He released her hand reluctantly and she walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned back. "Jonathan? I'm glad you told me. I'm glad we're not pretending anymore." "Me too." Saturday evening, Simone and Terrence took a taxi to Jonathan's penthouse. Her brother was nervous, which manifested in him reciting random computer facts the entire journey. "Did you know that the first computer mouse was made of wood?" he said. "And that the first computer programmer was a woman named Ada Lovelace? And that more than 90% of the world's currency exists only digitally." "Those are interesting facts," Simone said, squeezing his hand. "I'm nervous," Terrence admitted. "What if they don't like me?" "They'll like you. Just be yourself." When they arrived, Sophie answered the door with Jonathan right behind her. The little girl looked at Terrence with open curiosity. "You're tall," she observed. "You're short," Terrence replied, then looked horrified. "Sorry? That was rude. I'm not good at initial greetings." "It's okay. I am short. I'm only 6. Sophie tilted her head. "Simone says you're good with computers." "I'm very good with computers. Want to see what I'm working on?" "Yes." And just like that, the ice was broken. The two of them disappeared into Sophie's playroom while Jonathan and Simone stood in the entryway, exchanging amazed glances. "That was easier than expected," Jonathan said. "They understand each other. Different ages, different interests, but they both know what it's like to process the world differently." Dinner was relaxed and comfortable. Terrence explained his current coding project, a video game about organizing objects by pattern and color. Sophie listened with rapt attention and offered suggestions about what kinds of patterns would be most satisfying. Jonathan asked thoughtful questions. Simone felt her heart expanding, watching these people who had become so important to her connecting with each other. After dinner, the four of them played a board game that Sophie had modified to include extra rules about color matching. Terrence appreciated the logic of her modifications and suggested further improvements. They were speaking the same language, just in different dialects. When it was time to leave, Terrence surprised everyone by initiating a goodbye high five with Sophie. The little girl carefully gave him 5, then turned to Simone. "When can you come back?" "Soon," Simone promised. "Very soon." In the taxi home, Terrence was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I like them. Mr. Harrison is nice. He didn't treat me like I was weird." "You're not weird. You're wonderful." "Sophie's nice too. She understands patterns." "She does." "Are you going to marry Mr. Harrison?" Simone nearly choked. "What? Where did that come from?" "You look at him the way Mom used to look at Dad. Before the accident. Like he's important. And he looks at you the same way." "It's complicated, Terrence. Because he's rich and you're not? Because he's your boss? Those are just circumstantial factors. What matters is compatibility and mutual respect." "When did you get so wise?" "I've been reading about relationships. Human bonding patterns are fascinating from a psychological perspective." Simone laughed and hugged her brother. "I don't know what's going to happen with Jonathan and me, but I do know that you and I are going to be okay. Better than okay. We have people who care about us now. Real people who see us for who we are." "That's good," Terrence said simply. "I was lonely before. I'm not lonely anymore." Simone felt tears threaten. Her brave, brilliant little brother who had been through so much. "Me neither, buddy. Me neither." That night, after Terrence was asleep, Simone received a text from Jonathan. "Thank you for tonight. Terrence is wonderful. Sophie hasn't stopped talking about him. She wants to know when they can work on his game together." Simone replied, "Anytime. And thank you for welcoming him so warmly. He came home happy. So did Sophie. So did I." "Me too." There was a pause, then another message appeared. "I meant what I said the other day. About my feelings. About wanting to explore this connection between us." Simone's heart raced as she typed, "I want that too. But slow. For Sophie. For Terrence. To do this right." "Agreed. Good night, Simone." "Good night, Jonathan." She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, a smile playing on her lips. 6 months ago, she had been an exhausted waitress barely making ends meet, facing each day with grim determination. Now she had meaningful work, financial stability, and the beginning of something that felt like it could be love. Kindness had led her here. Hope had sustained her. And love, maybe, would carry her forward. January brought bitter cold to the city, but inside Harrison Financial, Simone's wellness initiatives were creating warmth of a different kind. The sensory-friendly spaces she had designed were being used more than anyone had predicted. Employees who had previously worked through discomfort rather than asking for accommodations were now taking advantage of the quiet rooms, the fidget tool libraries, the flexible lighting options. The company culture was shifting, becoming more inclusive and understanding. Gordon from operations stopped by her office one morning with coffee and a grateful smile. "I just wanted to tell you something," he said, settling into one of her consultation chairs. "I've worked here for 12 years. For all 12 of those years, I've hidden my ADHD like it was something shameful. I've struggled through long meetings where I couldn't focus. I've worked late to make up for the time I lost to distraction. I felt like a fraud who was constantly on the verge of being found out." Simone listened, her heart aching for him. "But since you created that movement room with the standing desks and the walking pads, I've been able to focus better than I have in my entire career. And last week I finally told my team about my diagnosis. Do you know what happened? 3 of them admitted they have ADHD too. We're starting a support group. Because you made it okay to be different here." Tears pricked Simone's eyes. "That's wonderful, Gordon. I'm so glad the space is helping. You're changing lives. Jonathan Harrison made the best decision of his career when he hired you." He stood, then paused. "Also, I'm not blind. I see the way he looks at you. Everyone does. And for what it's worth, I think it's great. You two make sense together." After he left, Simone sat at her desk, processing. Everyone could see it. The connection between her and Jonathan was apparently obvious to the entire office. She should probably be worried about workplace gossip, but she found she didn't care. What she and Jonathan were building felt too real, too important to hide. That evening, as had become their routine, Simone went to Jonathan's penthouse after work. It was Sophie's therapy night, and Simone often attended the sessions to learn techniques that could help at school or in public settings. But tonight, the therapist had canceled due to a family emergency. "Stay anyway?" Jonathan asked when he called to tell her. "Sophie wants to show you something she made at school." "Of course." When Simone arrived, Sophie dragged her immediately to the dining table where a carefully constructed model sat. It was made from cardboard, paint, and what looked like hundreds of tiny organized pieces. "It's a sensory garden," Sophie explained, her voice filled with pride. "See? This section has plants you can touch that feel different. This part has wind chimes that make soft sounds. This part has flowers that smell good but not too strong. And this part has smooth rocks you can arrange in patterns." Simone crouched down to eye level with the model, genuinely impressed. "Sophie, this is incredible. The detail work is amazing. How long did it take you to make this?" 3 weeks. I worked on it during choice time at school. My teacher helped me with the hard cutting parts, but I designed it all myself. It's brilliant. Have you thought about making a real version?" Sophie's eyes went wide. "A real garden? Like outside?" "Why not? With your dad's permission, we could create a small sensory garden on his balcony. Nothing huge, but a space where you could go when you needed to calm down or just wanted to experience different textures and smells." "Could we really?" Simone looked up at Jonathan, who had been watching the exchange with a soft expression. "Could we? I think that's a wonderful idea. Sophie, would you like that?" "Yes, yes, yes." Sophie was practically bouncing, which for her was a significant display of excitement. "Then we'll do it. As soon as the weather warms up a bit, we'll start planning." Jonathan met Simone's eyes over his daughter's head, and the gratitude there was unmistakable. Later, after Sophie was in bed, Jonathan and Simone sat on the couch with glasses of wine, looking out at the city lights. "You're really good with her," Jonathan said. "The way you engage with her ideas, take them seriously. It means everything. She's easy to be good with. She's creative and thoughtful. People just need to slow down enough to see it." Her mother didn't. The words hung in the air. Jonathan rarely mentioned his ex-wife. Simone knew only the basic facts. They had divorced when Sophie was diagnosed, and she had moved to another state with minimal contact since. "Do you want to talk about it?" Simone asked gently. Jonathan took a long breath. "We got married young. I was 28, she was 26. Both from wealthy families, similar backgrounds. It seemed like the logical thing to do. I thought I loved her. Maybe I did, in a way. But it wasn't the kind of love that survives real challenges. And Sophie was a challenge. The pregnancy was planned. We both wanted children. But Rachel had very specific ideas about what motherhood would look like. Playdates at the country club. Prestigious preschools. A daughter who fit a certain mold. And Sophie didn't fit the mold. No. And Rachel couldn't accept that. At first, she was in denial about the diagnosis. Insisted the doctors were wrong, that Sophie just needed more discipline. Then she went through a phase of trying every alternative treatment she could find, things with no scientific backing, just desperate attempts to fix our daughter. When none of it worked, when Sophie continued to be exactly who she was, Rachel just gave up. I'm sorry. She left on Sophie's 4th birthday. Filed for divorce, took a settlement, and moved to California. She sends cards on birthdays and Christmas, but she hasn't seen Sophie in person in 2 years. She calls it needing space to process. I call it abandonment. The pain in his voice was raw, and Simone reached for his hand without thinking. Their fingers intertwined naturally. Sophie deserves better than that, Simone said fiercely. She does. And she's getting it now. She has you. I'm not her mother. No, but you're someone who sees her and loves her for exactly who she is. That's more than Rachel ever did. They sat in silence for a while, hands still clasped. Then Jonathan said, "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" "Anything." "Sometimes I'm scared I'm not enough for her. That I'm failing her by being a single parent. That she needs someone else, someone better, someone who understands her the way you do." Simone shifted to face him fully. "Jonathan, you are enough. More than enough. The way you've adapted your entire life around her needs, the way you keep learning and trying new approaches, the way you defend her and advocate for her, that's not failure. That's love. Real, powerful love. But what if I make a mistake? What if I mess her up?" "You will make mistakes. All parents do. But Sophie knows she's loved. She knows she's safe. That's what matters most." "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "Because I've been where you are. Different circumstances but the same fear. Am I doing enough for Terrence? Am I messing him up?" But then I realized that perfect doesn't exist. The best we can do is love them, support them, and keep trying. That's all anyone can ask. Jonathan looked at her with such intensity that Simone's breath caught. "What did I do to deserve you in my life?" "You saw someone who was struggling and you helped. That's not common. Most people look away. I couldn't look away from you. Not then. Not now." The air between them shifted, charged with something electric. Jonathan's free hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek gently. "Is this okay?" he asked softly. "Yes." He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull back. But Simone didn't want to pull back. She wanted this. Had wanted this for weeks. When his lips met hers, it felt like coming home. The kiss was gentle, exploratory, filled with all the things they had been holding back. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, Jonathan rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that for so long," he admitted. "Me too. We should probably talk about what this means. About how we handle this at work. About Sophie." "We should," Simone agreed. "But maybe not right now. Right now, can we just be two people who care about each other?" "I can do that." They kissed again, longer this time, and Simone felt something click into place. This was right. Whatever complications lay ahead, whatever challenges they would face, this connection between them was real and worth fighting for. When she finally left that night, taking a taxi home in the early hours of the morning, Simone felt transformed. She had been alone for so long, carrying so much weight. Now she had someone who wanted to share that load. Someone who saw her struggles and wanted to help. Someone who made her feel valued and cherished. She thought about her parents gone too soon. They would have liked Jonathan. They would have been proud of how she had rebuilt her life after losing them. They would have been happy that she was finding love again after so much loss. "Love?" she whispered to herself in the darkness of the taxi. Was that what this was? It felt too soon to use such a weighty word. But it also felt true. She was falling in love with Jonathan Harrison. Maybe had already fallen. And the most wonderful part was that he was falling too. By February, the relationship between Simone and Jonathan had settled into a comfortable rhythm. They were discreet at work, maintaining professional boundaries during office hours. But in private, with Sophie as their delighted witness, they were building something beautiful. Sophie herself was flourishing. The combination of having Simone in her life regularly and the security of knowing her father was happy had created an environment where the little girl felt safe to grow. Her teachers reported that she was speaking more in class, initiating interactions with other children, showing increased flexibility when routines changed unexpectedly. On a Saturday morning in mid-February, Simone arrived at the penthouse to find Sophie and Jonathan at the dining table, surrounded by colorful folders and papers. "What's all this?" she asked, setting down the coffee she had brought for Jonathan and the hot chocolate for Sophie. "School project," Sophie announced. We have to make a family tree. I'm doing mine different from everyone else. Simone looked at the paper Sophie was working on. Instead of a traditional tree structure, she had created a pattern-based design with circles connected by lines of different colors. Tell me about it, Simone said, genuinely curious. See, the blue lines are people who live with you. The red lines are people who are family but don't live with you. The green lines are people who aren't related but feel like family. The purple lines are people who help you when you need it. That's a really thoughtful system. Who's in your tree? Sophie pointed to the central circle. This is me. Blue line to Dad because he lives with me. Red line to Grandma because she's family but lives far away. And green line to you because you're not related but you feel like family. Simone felt her throat tighten with emotion. I feel like you're family too, Sophie. And purple line to your brother Terrence because he helped me fix my game code last week. He did. On video chat, Jonathan explained. Sophie was trying to make a color sorting game on the tablet. Terrence walked her through debugging some issues. He said it was fun, Sophie added. He said I have good logic for a 6-year-old. Simone smiled, proud of her brother. He's right. You do. Can I ask you something? Sophie looked up at Simone, her expression serious. Of course. Are you going to be my new mom? The question landed like a bomb in the quiet room. Jonathan went very still. Simone's heart raced as she tried to figure out how to respond honestly without making promises she couldn't keep. What makes you ask that? Simone said carefully. Dad is happier when you're here. You make him smile. And you help me like moms are supposed to help. You understand my feelings. And you kiss him sometimes. I saw you. Simone glanced at Jonathan, who looked equal parts panicked and hopeful. They had been so careful to keep physical affection private, but clearly not careful enough. Your dad and I care about each other very much, Simone said, choosing her words cautiously. And I care about you very much. But becoming a family takes time. It's not something we can rush. But you want to? I want to be in your life, Sophie. In whatever way makes sense for all of us. I want you to be my mom, Sophie said matter-of-factly. I know I have a mom already, but she doesn't come see me. She doesn't understand me like you do. So I want you to be my real mom. The one who's here. Tears spilled down Simone's cheeks before she could stop them. Jonathan reached over and squeezed her hand. Sophie, honey, that's a big conversation, Jonathan said gently. Simone and I are still figuring things out. But what I can tell you is that Simone loves you very much. That's not going to change no matter what. I do love you, Simone confirmed, her voice thick. So much, Sophie. You're one of the most important people in my life. Good, Sophie said, apparently satisfied. She returned to her family tree, carefully drawing more connecting lines. Then you should stay. Forever. After Sophie went to play in her room, Jonathan pulled Simone into his arms. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't expect her to ask that so directly. She's honest. It's one of the things I love about her. Simone wiped her eyes. But she's right, isn't she? About what we want. What do you want, Simone? I want what she said. I want forever. I want to be part of this family. Is that crazy? We've only been together for a few months. It's not crazy. I want the same thing. But I need you to be sure. Sophie has already lost one mother. If you commit to this and then change your mind, it would destroy her. I'm not going to change my mind. How can you be so certain? Because I know what it feels like when something is right. And this is right. You, Sophie, even the complications. All of it feels right. Jonathan kissed her forehead, then her lips. Move in with us. Simone pulled back, surprised. What? Move in. You and Terrence. This place is huge. We have plenty of room. Sophie already thinks of you as family. I want to wake up with you every morning. I want to build this life together properly. Jonathan, that's a huge step. I know. And if you're not ready, I understand. But I'm ready. I love you, Simone. I'm in love with you. I have been for weeks. And I don't want to waste any more time pretending this is casual or temporary. I love you too, Simone said, the words coming easily. I've been terrified to say it, but I do. I love you so much. They stood in the middle of the dining room holding each other, both crying now. Two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way, building something neither had planned but both desperately wanted. We should talk to Terrence first, Simone said practically. Make sure he's comfortable with the idea. His opinion matters. Absolutely. Why don't we all have dinner tonight? Make it official? That evening, all four of them gathered around Jonathan's dining table. Terrence had been quiet during the meal, processing in his usual way. When Jonathan and Simone explained the proposal to move in together, the teenager listened carefully. "Would I have my own room?" he asked. "Of course. A bigger one than you have now, with space for all your computer equipment." "Would I have to change schools?" "No. We're in the same school district." "Would this mean Sophie is like my sister?" "In a way, yes," Simone said. "How do you feel about that?" Terrence looked at Sophie, who was watching him with hopeful eyes. "She's okay. She understands patterns. And she doesn't think I'm weird for liking code." "You're not weird," Sophie said firmly. "You're smart. See? She gets it." Terrence turned to Simone. "I think we should do it. You've been happier lately. You laugh more. And Mr. Harrison is nice to you. That matters." "It does matter," Simone agreed, her heart full. "When would we move?" Terrence asked practically. "How about we start slowly?" Jonathan suggested. "Bring some things over this week. Get used to the space. Make it feel like home gradually rather than all at once." "That's a good plan. Reduces anxiety about major life transitions." Terrence smiled slightly. "I looked up studies on blended families. Gradual integration has higher success rates." Jonathan laughed. "I should have known you'd research this. Knowledge reduces uncertainty. Uncertainty creates stress." "He's not wrong," Simone said, smiling. Over the next week, the transition began. Terrence's computer equipment was set up in his new room. Simone's clothes gradually filled half of Jonathan's closet. Sophie helped arrange Terrence's things, making sure his workspace had optimal organization for his coding projects. The weekend after the move was complete, they decided to celebrate by finally starting work on Sophie's sensory garden. Despite the lingering cold, they spent the afternoon on the penthouse balcony, setting up planters and organizing supplies. Sophie was in her element, directing the placement of each component according to her careful design. Terrence helped with the technical aspects, calculating optimal spacing and drainage. Jonathan handled the heavy lifting. And Simone coordinated everything, making sure Sophie's vision came to life. By the end of the day, the framework was in place. When spring came, they would add the plants and finish the details. But already the space was transforming into exactly what Sophie had imagined. "It's perfect," the little girl said, standing back to admire their work. "Everyone helped. Like a real family." "We are a real family," Jonathan said, pulling her into a hug. "Maybe not traditional, but definitely real." That night, after both children were asleep, Simone and Jonathan sat on the couch, exhausted but content. "I can't believe this is my life now," Simone said. 6 months ago I was working 3 jobs and barely making rent. Now I have a career I love, my brother is thriving, and I'm living with the man I love and his incredible daughter." "Kindness led you here," Jonathan said. "You showed kindness to a stranger and her father in a restaurant. And everything else followed. You showed kindness too. You saw someone struggling and you helped. Not everyone would have done that. I'm glad I did. I can't imagine my life without you now." "Good. Because you're stuck with me. Best thing I've ever been stuck with." They fell asleep on the couch, wrapped around each other, the city lights twinkling outside the window. And in their rooms down the hall, 2 children slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that they were loved, understood, and finally part of a family that celebrated them exactly as they were. Spring arrived in bursts of color and warmth, bringing life back to the city. Sophie's sensory garden flourished on the balcony, becoming her favorite place to spend quiet afternoons. The lavender had grown in beautifully, and Sophie would often sit surrounded by the purple blooms, the familiar scent calming her after school. Life had settled into a beautiful routine. Simone and Terrence had fully integrated into the household. The teenager had flourished in his coding academy, already talking about potential career paths in game design or software engineering. Sophie had made friends with 2 other children in her class who also appreciated patterns and order. And Simone's wellness initiatives at Harrison Financial had expanded, with other companies reaching out to learn from their model. Jonathan watched all of this with a sense of wonder. His life had been transformed by one chance encounter in a restaurant. By one woman's compassionate response to his daughter's crisis. Everything good that had happened since could be traced back to that moment when Simone had crouched beside their table and said, "I see you." Now he was planning to make their connection permanent. It was a Saturday in late April, and Jonathan had arranged for Terrence and Sophie to spend the day with his mother while he took Simone to a special place. She thought they were just going for a drive to escape the city for a few hours. She had no idea what he had planned. They drove for an hour, talking and laughing, until they reached a nature preserve with walking trails and a small lake. The trees were full of new leaves, the grass impossibly green, flowers blooming everywhere. "This is beautiful," Simone said as they parked. "How did you find it?" "My parents used to bring me here when I was a kid. It was my favorite place. I wanted to share it with you." They walked the trails hand in hand, stopping to admire views and watch birds. Jonathan led her to a specific spot overlooking the lake, a small clearing with a bench and a perfect view of the water. "This was always my thinking spot," he said. "Whenever I had big decisions to make or problems to solve, I'd come here. The quiet helped me clear my mind." "I can see why. It's peaceful. I came here after Rachel left. Sat on this bench for hours trying to figure out how to move forward. How to be enough for Sophie on my own. I felt so lost." Simone squeezed his hand. "You found your way." "I found you," Jonathan corrected. He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands. "Simone, before I met you, I was surviving. Getting through each day, handling each crisis, trying to keep Sophie safe and happy. But I wasn't really living. I had forgotten what it felt like to wake up excited about the day ahead. To look forward to coming home. To feel like life could be more than just managing challenges." "Jonathan, let me finish. You've given me so much more than help with Sophie, though that alone would be enough. You've given me hope, partnership, joy. You've made me believe in the possibility of building a life that includes both duty and happiness. And I want to build that life with you. Officially. Permanently." He released her hands and pulled a small box from his pocket. When he opened it, sunlight caught the diamond ring inside, making it sparkle. "Marry me, Simone. Be my partner in everything. Let me spend the rest of my life showing you how much you mean to me. Let's build a family together, all four of us, and make it official." Tears were streaming down Simone's face. "Yes. Yes, absolutely yes." Jonathan slipped the ring on her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that felt like a promise. When they finally separated, both laughing and crying, Simone held up her hand to watch the ring catch the light. "It's perfect," she said. "Everything is perfect." "There's more," Jonathan said. "I have something else to tell you. Something I've been working on with Patricia and the legal team." "What?" "I want to adopt Terrence. Officially become his guardian alongside you. Give him the Harrison name if he wants it. Make sure he has every legal protection and opportunity. What do you think?" Simone couldn't speak through her tears. She just nodded frantically and hugged him so hard he stumbled backward. "And," Jonathan continued, "if you're comfortable with it, I'd like to start the process for you to legally adopt Sophie. Make it official that you're her mother. The one who's here. The one who understands her. What do you say?" "I say yes to everything." "Yes, yes, yes." They sat on the bench, holding each other, making plans for their future. A wedding in the fall, small and intimate. Legal proceedings to make their family official in every way. Dreams for what came next. When they finally returned to the city late that afternoon, both children were waiting excitedly. Jonathan's mother had clearly been in on the plan, because Sophie was wearing a new green dress and Terrence had been instructed to dress nicely. "Did you ask her?" Sophie demanded the moment they walked in the door. "I did," Jonathan confirmed. "Did she say yes?" "She said yes." Sophie shrieked, which was notable because she rarely raised her voice. She ran to Simone and hugged her fiercely. "You're going to be my real mom now." "I already am," Simone said, kneeling to Sophie's level. "But now we'll have the papers to prove it." "Good. Papers are important." Terrence approached more cautiously. "Mr. Harrison, Jonathan, told me about his offer. About adopting me. What do you think?" Simone asked. "I think it makes sense. Legally and emotionally. He's been more of a father figure to me in 6 months than most people get in a lifetime. And I like the idea of having a father again. I miss Dad." Jonathan crouched beside Simone. "I'm not trying to replace your father, Terrence. No one could do that. But I'd be honored to be someone you can count on. Someone who supports you and believes in you." "I know. And I appreciate that distinction. So yes, I'd like you to adopt me. If we're doing this blended family thing, we should do it completely." That evening they ordered dinner from Riverside Steakhouse, a nostalgic callback to where it all began. When the food arrived, Curtis, the manager, had included a handwritten note. "Congratulations to the happy couple. Simone, you were always too good for this place. I'm glad you found where you belong." They ate together as a family, the four of them around the dining table, making plans and sharing dreams. Terrence talked about his coding projects. Sophie described the new reading program at school that let her choose books about patterns in nature. Jonathan shared some ideas for expanding the wellness initiatives at work. And Simone simply listened, taking it all in, marveling at how her life had transformed. After dinner, she stood on the balcony looking out at the city lights. Jonathan joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Happy?" he asked. "More than I ever thought possible." "Me too." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe below them. Then Simone said, "Do you remember what Sophie said that first night? When she told you, I understood what it felt like." "I remember everything about that night. I think we found each other because we both knew what it meant to struggle, to fight for people we love, to refuse to give up even when things were hard. That shared understanding is the foundation of everything we've built. Kindness, hope, and love," Jonathan said. "Those are the things that led us here. And they'll carry us forward." "Always," Simone agreed. Inside, they could hear Sophie and Terence talking, their voices rising and falling in animated conversation about something to do with color theory and video game design. It was a perfect moment. One Simone wanted to freeze and keep forever. But she didn't need to freeze it. Because this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. The beginning of a life filled with these moments. With love and laughter and the beautiful chaos of a blended family finding its rhythm. Simone Brooks had walked into a restaurant 6 months ago carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Now she stood in a home filled with love, wearing an engagement ring, about to become part of a family she never could have imagined. And it had all started with a simple act of compassion. With seeing a child in distress and choosing to help instead of looking away. With recognizing shared humanity in a moment of crisis. The rest had followed naturally, unfolding like the flowers in Sophie's sensory garden. Growing in its own time. Blooming when the conditions were right. Creating something beautiful from seeds planted in kindness. The engagement announcement went smoothly. Friends and colleagues expressed genuine happiness for the couple. Patricia cried when Simone showed her the ring. Gordon from operations made a toast at the office, thanking Simone for making it okay to be different and thanking Jonathan for recognizing her value. Even Curtis from the steakhouse sent a flower arrangement with a card reading, "About time." Everything was perfect. Almost suspiciously perfect. Then on a Tuesday in early May, Rachel showed up. Jonathan's ex-wife appeared at his office unannounced, bypassing security by claiming she was there to discuss their daughter. Patricia called Jonathan in a panic, and he came down to the lobby to find Rachel sitting in one of the leather chairs, looking polished and composed in a white designer suit. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" "Hello, Jonathan. I came to talk about Sophie. You could have called." "I tried. You didn't answer." This was true. Jonathan had stopped answering Rachel's infrequent calls months ago, tired of the cycle of empty promises and disappointed expectations. "What do you want?" "I heard through mutual friends that you're engaged. To someone who works for you. Someone who's been spending a lot of time with our daughter. Simone. Her name is Simone. And yes, we're engaged. She's been wonderful with Sophie. I'd like to meet her. And see Sophie. I think it's time I reconnected with my daughter." Jonathan felt his jaw clench. "After 2 years of minimal contact, you suddenly want to reconnect now? Right after I get engaged? That's quite a coincidence." "It's not like that. I've been in therapy working through my issues. I'm ready to be a mother to Sophie again. You were always her mother. You chose not to be present for her." Rachel's composure cracked slightly. "That's not fair. You don't know how hard it was for me. The constant challenges, the stares, the feeling of failure. I know exactly how hard it was. I lived it too. The difference is I didn't abandon my daughter because things got difficult. I didn't abandon her. I needed space to process." "For 2 years? Sophie stopped asking about you after the first 6 months. Do you know why? Because children learn quickly who they can count on. And you taught her she couldn't count on you. I want to change that. I want to be part of her life again." Jonathan closed his eyes, fighting for calm. "Why now, Rachel? Tell me the truth." "Because I made mistakes. Because I've grown. And because I deserve a chance to fix things." "What about what Sophie deserves? Have you considered that?" "Of course I have. She deserves to know both her parents. She knows me. She has a stable life. She has people who love her and understand her. Disrupting that now, after all this time, would be incredibly harmful. I'm her mother, Jonathan. I have rights. You have legal custody rights, yes. But you gave up the right to disrupt her peace when you walked away." Their conversation was interrupted by Patricia. "Mr. Harrison, your 2 o'clock is here." Jonathan looked at his ex-wife. "I have to go. If you want to see Sophie, we need to do this properly. With preparation. with her therapist involved. This isn't something we spring on her. Fine. When? I'll discuss it with Sophie's therapist and Simone. We'll set up a proper meeting. But Rachel, hear me clearly, if you do this, you need to be committed. You can't pop into Sophie's life and then disappear again when things get hard. That would be cruel. I understand. Jonathan wasn't sure she did. But he nodded curtly and walked away, his mind already racing. How would he tell Simone? How would Sophie react? And most importantly, how did he protect his daughter from potential heartbreak? That evening, after both children were asleep, Jonathan sat down with Simone and explained the situation. He watched her face carefully, looking for signs of insecurity or jealousy. He found none. How do you feel about this? She asked instead. Angry, suspicious, protective. Rachel has a pattern of making promises she doesn't keep. I don't want Sophie getting her hopes up only to be disappointed again. But you can't refuse her request entirely. No. She has legal visitation rights. And maybe she has changed. People do sometimes. What does Sophie's therapist say? I called Dr. Morrison. She agrees we need to prepare Sophie carefully. She suggested a gradual reintroduction. First maybe some video calls. Then a supervised meeting in neutral territory. Slow steps to minimize the risk of overwhelming Sophie or creating false expectations. That sounds reasonable. You're being very calm about this. Simone took his hand. Because I'm not threatened by Rachel if that's what you're worried about. I know where I stand with you and Sophie. That's secure. And I want what's best for Sophie, even if what's best includes having a relationship with her biological mother. I love you, Jonathan said, pulling her close. Your maturity and grace continue to amaze me. I just trust what we've built. Rachel can't take that away. But over the next few weeks, as Rachel began her carefully supervised reintroduction to Sophie's life, Simone sometimes felt less confident than she appeared. Watching Rachel on video calls with Sophie, seeing the biological connection between mother and daughter, made her wonder if she would always be just the woman who stepped in. Never quite enough. Sophie, for her part, was confused. The little girl didn't remember her mother well, and Rachel's attempts to reconnect felt awkward and forced. After one particularly stilted video call, Sophie turned to Simone with tears in her eyes. Why is she trying so hard now? She didn't want me before. Sometimes people make mistakes, Simone said carefully, following the script Dr. Morrison had provided. And sometimes they try to fix them later. Your mom is trying to fix her mistakes. But you're my real mom now. You're here. You understand me. I am here. And I always will be. Nothing changes that. But it's okay for you to have a relationship with your first mom too if you want to. Do I have to want to? No, sweetheart. You don't have to force feelings you don't have. But you can give her a chance to show you who she is now. People can grow and change. The first in-person meeting was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in June, at a family-friendly restaurant with a play area. Jonathan, Simone, Sophie, and Dr. Morrison would all be present. Rachel would arrive separately. The morning of the meeting, Sophie was anxious. She arranged and rearranged her rocks 3 times. She changed her dress twice. She barely touched her breakfast. What if I don't like her? Sophie asked as Simone helped her get ready. Then that's okay. This is about you getting to know her, not about forcing a relationship that doesn't feel right. What if she doesn't like me? What if she thinks I'm still too hard to be around? Then that's her loss, Simone said firmly. But I don't think that will happen. I think she's going to see how amazing you are. At the restaurant, they settled into a booth in the back corner, the quietest section. When Rachel arrived, she looked nervous, which somehow made her more human. She wore jeans and a blue sweater, dressed down from her usual polished style. Hi Sophie, she said, her voice uncertain. You've gotten so big. Sophie looked at her mother, then at Simone, then back at Rachel. I'm 6.5 now. I was 4 when you left. The bluntness of the statement made Rachel flinch. I know. And I'm sorry I've been gone so long. I made some bad choices and you deserved better. Simone doesn't make bad choices. She stays. Simone sounds like a very special person. I'd like to hear about her if you want to tell me. Sophie brightened. She understands patterns. And she helped me make a sensory garden. And she reads to me every night. And she's going to be my legal mom soon because Dad is marrying her. Rachel's eyes flicked to Simone, and for a moment, something complicated passed over her face. Regret maybe. Or loss. That's wonderful, Rachel said, and to her credit, she sounded like she meant it. I'm glad you have someone who takes such good care of you. The lunch continued in fits and starts. Rachel tried hard, asking questions about school and hobbies and favorite things. Sophie answered politely but without warmth. She kept looking at Simone for reassurance, for permission to not perform affection she didn't feel. By the end of the meal, it was clear to everyone present that rebuilding a relationship would take a long time, if it happened at all. Sophie had been too young when Rachel left and too much time had passed. The little girl had built a life that didn't include her first mother, and squeezing Rachel back into that life felt forced and uncomfortable. In the parking lot afterward, while Jonathan took Sophie to the car, Rachel approached Simone. "Thank you," she said, "for being what I couldn't be. For loving my daughter the way she deserves." "I do love her," Simone said simply. "I can see that. And I can see she loves you. You're her mother in all the ways that matter." Rachel's eyes were wet. "I thought I'd feel angry about that, jealous, but instead I just feel relieved. Relieved that Sophie has someone who understands her. Someone who stayed. Are you going to keep trying to build a relationship with her?" "I don't know. Maybe. But I can see now that it has to be on her terms, at her pace. I can't force my way back into her life just because I'm ready now. She has to be ready too. And she might never be. She might surprise you. Children are resilient. If you're patient and consistent, maybe you'll find a place in her life eventually. But you need to accept that it might be a different role than you imagined. Not primary mother but something else." "I know. And I think I'm okay with that now. As long as she's happy and loved, that's what matters." Later that night, after Sophie had gone to bed and Terence was in his room, Jonathan and Simone sat together processing the day. "How are you really feeling about all this?" Jonathan asked. "Honestly, I feel sad for Rachel. She gave up something precious because she couldn't handle the challenges, and now she has to live with that loss. But I also feel confident. Sophie is my daughter in every way that counts. A title and legal documents will just make official what's already true in our hearts." "You're right. And Sophie made her feelings pretty clear today." "She did. But I hope she keeps an open mind. Rachel seems sincere about wanting to change. Maybe they can build something small over time. A card on holidays. An occasional video call. Something that lets Sophie know her birth mother cares, even if they're not close. You're generous with her. Because I've won. I get to be Sophie's mother. I get to watch her grow up. I get to help her navigate the world. Rachel lost all of that. I can afford to be generous." Jonathan pulled her close. "Have I mentioned lately that I'm in love with you?" "Maybe once or twice," Simone teased. "But I never get tired of hearing it." "Good. Because I plan to say it every day for the rest of our lives." The situation with Rachel resolved itself naturally over the following weeks. She continued monthly video calls with Sophie, but the little girl remained emotionally distant. Eventually, Rachel moved back to California, accepting that her role in Sophie's life would be peripheral at best. She sent birthday and Christmas presents, and Sophie politely thanked her. But the real relationship, the deep bond, was between Sophie and Simone. And everyone, including Rachel, had to accept that some wounds, once created, couldn't be fully healed. Only bridged, carefully and slowly, with no guarantees of success. What mattered was that Sophie was happy, secure, and deeply loved. Everything else was secondary. The leaves were beginning to turn when Jonathan and Simone got married on a Saturday in October. The ceremony was small, held in the same nature preserve where Jonathan had proposed. Only close friends and family attended. Jonathan's mother, a few colleagues from Harrison Financial, Sophie and Terence standing up front as witnesses to the union. Sophie wore a maroon dress she had picked out herself, the color carefully chosen to complement the fall foliage. Terence wore a gray suit with a blue tie. And Simone wore a simple cream-colored dress that made her look radiant against the backdrop of red and gold leaves. There were no grand speeches or elaborate traditions. Just two people promising to love and support each other, to build a life together, to be partners in all things. When they kissed, Sophie clapped enthusiastically and even Terence smiled. The reception was at a local restaurant, simple and intimate. Gordon from operations gave a toast about how Jonathan and Simone had created something special not just in their relationship but in their work, showing that kindness and understanding could transform professional spaces. Curtis from Riverside Steakhouse sent a message that was read aloud, congratulating the couple who proved that the best things in life start with choosing to help someone when you could have looked away. As the sun set and the party wound down, the four of them drove back to their penthouse. No honeymoon was planned. Jonathan and Simone had decided they would rather spend their time together as a family than jet off somewhere alone. That evening, with both children finally asleep after an exciting day, Jonathan and Simone stood on their balcony in the sensory garden. The plants had been carefully winterized, ready to sleep through the cold months before blooming again in spring. "Mrs. Harrison," Jonathan said, wrapping his arms around his wife. "How does that sound?" "Perfect. Though I still have to get used to it. I've been Simone Brooks for 24 years. You can keep your name if you want. Or hyphenate. Whatever feels right." "No, I want to be Simone Harrison. I want all of us to have the same last name. A real family name. Terrence Harrison and Sophie Harrison. I like the sound of that." "Me too." The adoption proceedings for both children were well underway. The legal system was cooperating, recognizing that these arrangements were in the best interests of everyone involved. By Christmas, the paperwork would be finalized. They would be a family in every possible way. "Do you ever think about that night?" Simone asked. "The night we met?" "All the time. I think about how terrified I was, how helpless I felt, and how you appeared like some kind of guardian angel and saved us both." "I wasn't an angel. I was just someone who understood. That made all the difference. Sophie needed someone who understood. I needed someone who understood. And you were there. I needed you too, even though I didn't know it yet. I was drowning in responsibility and financial stress. You threw me a life preserver. We saved each other. We did." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle below. Then Simone said, "I want to tell you something. Something I've been thinking about." "What's that?" "I want to expand the wellness program. Not just at Harrison Financial but at other companies too. I want to create a consulting business that helps organizations design truly inclusive spaces. Train managers and HR departments on neurodiversity. Share what we've learned." "That's a wonderful idea. But it would mean reducing my hours at your company. Maybe eventually leaving altogether to focus on this new venture full-time. Would that be okay?" "Simone, you should pursue this. It's clearly your calling. And having you work elsewhere would eliminate any lingering concerns about workplace dynamics or favoritism. Not that I think anyone questions your qualifications anymore. So you support this?" "Completely. In fact, I'd like to be your first investor. Help you get the business off the ground properly." "Jonathan, you can't keep giving me money. I'm not giving it to you. I'm investing in a promising business with a proven track record of success. That's just smart business." Simone laughed. "You're impossible. But you love me anyway." "I do. So much." The next few months flew by in a blur of happiness. Simone officially launched her consulting business, Brooks Harrison Consulting, in January. Her first clients came through referrals from impressed colleagues at Harrison Financial. Within 3 months she had a waiting list. Terrence was accepted into a prestigious summer coding program at a nearby university. His instructors praised his natural talent and innovative thinking. He had found his path, his purpose, and he was thriving. Sophie continued to make steady progress. She would never be neurotypical, nor would anyone want her to be. But she was learning to navigate the world on her own terms, with support and understanding from people who loved her. She had stopped asking about Rachel, having made peace with the fact that some relationships weren't meant to be close. She had the family she needed right here at home. And Jonathan felt like he could finally breathe. 4 years after Sophie's diagnosis, he had carried a weight of worry and responsibility that never lifted. But now, with Simone beside him, that weight was shared. He wasn't alone anymore. He had a partner who understood his challenges because she faced similar ones with Terrence. They navigated parenting together, making decisions jointly, supporting each other through hard days. One evening in March, nearly a year after the wedding, Sophie made an announcement at dinner that stopped everyone mid-bite. "I want to tell you something," she said with her characteristic directness. "I practiced saying it all day." "We're listening," Simone encouraged. Sophie took a deep breath. "I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad. I love you, Terrence. And I'm glad we're a family." The end. It was the longest unprompted speech Sophie had ever made. Her language skills had been developing steadily, but she rarely offered more than a few words at a time unless specifically engaged in conversation. Simone felt tears stream down her face. "I love you too, Sophie. So much." "Group hug," Terrence announced in a rare display of spontaneous affection. They all stood and embraced in the middle of the dining room, a tangle of arms and love and belonging. That night, after the children were asleep, Jonathan found Simone in Sophie's sensory garden. The early spring had brought the first brave flowers, purple crocuses pushing through the soil. "The garden is waking up," Simone observed. "Sophie will be thrilled. She's been checking for blooms every day. She's come so far." "They both have. Because they had you." We all did. Simone turned to face her husband. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. For this happiness to be too good to be true. It's not. This is real. This is what life looks like when you choose kindness and hope and love. When you help people instead of judging them. When you build something based on genuine understanding and respect. I never imagined I could have this. A career that matters. Financial security. Children who feel like mine in every way. And you. Especially you. The feeling is entirely mutual. I was surviving before you. Now I'm living. There's a huge difference. They went inside, leaving the garden to its quiet growth. In her room, Sophie slept peacefully, surrounded by her carefully organized collections. In his room, Terrence's computer hummed softly as it processed some complex code he had written before bed. And in the master bedroom, Jonathan and Simone held each other, grateful for the unexpected journey that had brought them together. One act of compassion. That's all it had taken to change everything. One moment of choosing to help instead of turning away. One instance of seeing a struggling child and her desperate father as people worthy of care. From that single moment, an entire life had grown. A relationship. A family. A future filled with possibility. Simone thought about the young woman she had been a year ago. Working 3 jobs, raising her brother alone, barely keeping her head above water. That woman had been tired and scared and uncertain. But she had also been kind. And in the end, kindness had saved her. Not because she had been kind expecting reward, but because kindness creates connections. And connections create opportunities. And opportunities, when met with courage and honesty, create lives worth living. Thank you, Simone whispered into the darkness. For what? Jonathan asked sleepily. For seeing me. For helping me. For loving me. Thank you for saving Sophie. For saving me. For showing up when we needed you most and never leaving. I'll never leave. You're stuck with me now. Forever. Forever sounds perfect. And it was. Not perfect in the sense of flawless or without challenges. They would face difficulties ahead. Sophie would continue to need support as she grew. Terrence would navigate the complexities of adolescence and young adulthood with autism. Simone's business would have ups and downs. Jonathan's company would face competitive pressures. But they would face everything together. As a family. Built not on biology or obligation but on choice. On the decision to see each other, help each other, love each other. Outside, the city hummed with life. Millions of people going about their business, most of them strangers to each other, ships passing in the night. But sometimes, if the moment was right and the heart was open, strangers became friends. Friends became family. And family became forever. Sophie's first words to Simone echoed in her memory. She knows. She knows what it feels like. Yes. Understanding. That was the foundation of everything. Understanding that came from shared experience, from empathy, from taking the time to truly see another person's reality. From that understanding, everything else had grown. Love. Partnership. Family. Home. Simone Brooks Harrison fell asleep in her husband's arms, in the home she shared with her children, in the life she had built from one simple act of kindness in a restaurant 6 months ago. And she smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring more moments like these. More chances to help. More opportunities to love. More proof that in a world that often felt harsh and judgmental, kindness still mattered most. Kindness, hope, and love. Those 3 things had led her here. And those 3 things would carry her forward always.